Hey everybody, it's Mike from Overground here, and this is going to be episode 4 of our Rainbow series. This is the series where we take the cards that we pulled out of our special booster 1.0 boxes. We throw a deck together of every single color of our favorite decks, our favorite strategies, our favorite through lines, and we showcase them to the viewer. We pass the savings on to you. So let's go ahead and get into the next color, and that is going to be black. If you haven't watched them previously, we've already featured a red Gallantmon deck, a purple Lilithmon deck, and a yellow DP reduction Angemon-esque deck so far on the channel. So today, the color of choice is going to be black. And black is a very unique color in the sense that it focuses heavily on the blocker mechanic and focuses heavily on the reboot mechanic. So you have a lot of Digimon that are both offensive and defensive simultaneously. Black did not get a lot of support in 1.0, but I feel like the deck we have here is one of the best things that we could have built given what card pool was available and what cards fell into our lap based on what we opened from our packs. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first cards, as always, are going to be the Digi-Eggs. So we're going to start with 4 Kaporimon and 1 Sumamon, just to round it off. Again, similar to the yellow deck, the babies in black right now are not fantastic. Honestly, if it were up to me, I wouldn't even play a 5th one because Sumamon really does nothing for the deck. Kaporimon, however, is actually quite beneficial to the deck's overall strategy. A Digimon has Reboot. It gains 1000. As you'll see later on, the higher up you go in your chains, your Digimon will have Reboot, and that gives you a nice little boost because since the majority of them are also blockers, it means that on your opponent's turn, you're going to have big bodies to potentially intercept their attacks. So the 5th Digi-Egg, again, is Sumamon. Sumamon's inheritable is that if you have another Digimon in play with the same name, this Digimon gets plus 2000. Obviously, we're in Omnimon meta, so we're likely not going to be purposely putting out Digimon with the same name to potentially fall victim to that. So this will rarely come up. However, if you do end up having multiple blockers out at the same time, this can potentially make your one blocker even bigger. That is it for the eggs. Now we're going to go into the rookies. Now, Black only had 3 rookies available in the entirety of set 1. And we're playing all of them in multiples. So, we're playing 4 of the Toy Agumon. Toy Agumon has the inheritable where it gives something Reboot, which you're already starting to see the combos with the Kaporimon. Yeah, that is it. We're playing 4 Hagurumon at the 2 cost. And we're playing 4 Gatsumon. And that's it. That's all we have access to. These are the only rookies at our disposal. So, we're just going to max out on every possible copy that we can. Now, Gatsumon's an interesting case because at the time, it's the only rookie blocker that carries the same kind of lose-to-memory effect that most of the regular colored blockers actually have. But that is it for the rookies. So now, this is where our deck takes not necessarily a divergence, but you'll kind of see what happens. So, spoiler alert, this deck was built to be more of a Milleniummon Turbo list that uses the black WarGreymon as a backup. So to that effect, we're playing 4 of the Numamon because he's only 1 cost, so it helps us get to our Milleniummons just a little bit faster. However, a 3000 level 4 is just not great, but thankfully, because of what he exists to do, we want to play a full suite of 4. Next, we're playing the champion blocker in this deck, which is Gardramon. Now, Gardramon is interesting because he's kind of like a wall for Magic the Gathering. He himself cannot attack. He only exists to defend, and that is what he's going to do. But for a 2-drop cost, he's 7,000, which is 1,000 more than the standard blockers you're going to see on every other color. And when you combo that with something like if you put that on top of a Toy Agumon and you give him Reboot, and you've got the Kaporimon underneath as well, now you're looking at an 8,000 blocker, and you combo that with something like Tai down the road as well, he could be potentially 9,000, 10,000. And on a champion, that's actually pretty good. So even if you're not going to attack with them, he kind of sticks and he stays on the table for a really long time. And it kind of doesn't really give your opponent a lot of motivation to attack because they know that you're going to have an option to just kind of intercept their attack with Gardramon and potentially destroy the Digimon that's attacking, depending on the state of the game. And the last champion we're playing is just 3 of the Greymon. And what this Black Greymon does, it has the inheritable, is that, well, this Digimon has Reboot, it gains jamming. So if you were to put this on top of the Toy Agumon, for example, and then you evolve on top from the Greymon into something else, that means that the Digimon that is going to be the next stage on top of this Greymon is going to have Reboot and jamming, which allows you to be a bit more aggressive in this deck as well, because it is kind of a turtle deck. You just kind of sit back on your blockers and kind of deplete your opponent's resources little by little. Next, we're going to go into ultimates. So we're playing 4 Metal Greymon, and what this Metal Greymon does is that it has an inheritable that while the Digimon has Reboot, it gains Security Attack +1. So you can see that Reboot is kind of the main through line and the main theme of this deck. We want to establish our Toy Agumons as soon as possible and then ride the chain up, so that way our Digimon with Reboot will have this kind of stacked inheritable lineup. So it's going to have Jamming and it's going to have Security Attack +1. Which, as we've learned in the Imperial Dramon deck, Jamming is good on its own as it is. When you factor in that it has Security Attack +1, that's going to be 2 cards you're ripping away from your opponent's security without absolutely any fear. So the next ultimate we're playing, and again, it's another blocker, it's going to be 4 Andromon. So this is a 3-cost blocker for 7,000, which arguably Guardramon is a little bit better. But what I like about Andromon in this particular list is that it makes it so that you can go on top of the Greymon, for example. And this is where things get a little cool and interesting. So let's say I evolve this Andromon on top of this Greymon. Now, if I have Reboot, I also get Jamming. But ideally, in a perfect world, I would have also evolved this on top of a Toy Agumon. So now you're going to start to kind of see where this kind of comes together. So the Andromon has Reboot because of the Toy Agumon, and now because of Greymon's effect, it also has Jamming. So now I can attack with Jamming, rip a card out of my opponent's security. It's not going to die. And then when my opponent draws for turn, during their unsuspend phase, boom, I now have an active blocker. And that's really, really, really cool. And Andromon has the ability to do that where Guardramon could not, because Guardramon's effect prevents it from attacking. So Andromon literally, he attack, he protect. And again, when we're going to talk about our boosts and everything like that, you can see him hitting heights of maybe 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. So that's a very big blocker to have to deal with. And lastly, or not lastly, but next rather, we're going to play High Andromon. So this is a 12,000 vanilla mega. So this helps you, again, when you need to start being a bit more aggressive, when you don't feel like you need those blockers anymore, you can step on up into this and just start throwing big numbers at your opponent. And the reason we play 4 of this, especially at the 2 cost, because it's the cheapest mega for black, and this helps you get into your Milleniummon just a little bit faster. And the last of the megas, there are 5 left. We're playing 3 of the black WarGreymon. And so this is similar to the Andromon. However, it has blocker and Reboot already baked into the card. So you don't actually need to get any cool extra inheritables. However, if you do decide to ride up the chain with the Greymon and the Metal Greymon, you're going to get a 11,000 blocker with Reboot already. So you don't need to ride the Toy Agumon chain here, because it already is going to have Reboot, but it's going to have Jamming and Security Attack +1. So you can attack with an 11,000 blocker, take 2 securities out of your opponent with Jamming, and then on your opponent's next turn, it becomes active again, and they have a 12, 13, 14,000 blocker that they need to deal with. So this is like the Andromon strategy, but amp it up to 11. And the last 2 megas are just 2 Machine Dramon. You're likely never going to evolve into this Machine Dramon. You're likely just going to be hard playing it. But what this Machine Dramon does, which we all should know by now, is that on play, you trigger D-Digivolve 2. So for 2 of your opponent's Digimon. So you target 2 of their Digimon, you remove the top 2 cards from them, and you reduce them to the form that's 2 cards less. But if they can only go down to a level 3, they just stay as a level 3. And what Machine Dramon does in this deck specifically is that it helps you control your opponent's board and put them in a situation where they have Digimon that will be less DP than your blockers. Because as you de-Digivolve them from Mega or Ultimate down, you're going to get to a point where their DP levels cannot come close to the levels that your blockers are, and they can never take a hit off of you. Furthermore, Machine Dramon himself is also a blocker. So that means that he's already 11,000 to boot, and when you factor in all potential buffs from like your ties or anything like that, he could be a 12,000, 13,000 blocker that your opponent would have to just deal with, especially after you've Digivolved their entire board. Sure, he costs 12, and even though they have to level up all the way to get back into a Mega, Machine Dramon will just be sitting there waiting to absorb that one attack. So finally, the last Digimon that we're playing is the 4 Milleniummon. So Milleniummon is the black and purple equivalent of Omnimon. When he's Digivolved, he costs the same 6. You can, when he's Digivolved, you can return one of your opponent's Digimon to the bottom of their deck and trash all evolution sources. So this is kind of your main removal in this deck. Again, if you ride this chain all the way up from a Toy Agumon, This Milleniummon will have 13,000, it will have reboot, and it will also have security attack +1 and jamming. So you can pop it, spin a card your opponent has to the bottom of their deck, and then you can attack with a very, very, very big boy. Now, the best part about Milleniummon is that when he himself is destroyed, if he had any Digivolution sources under him, he can just come back for free. So at best, he helps you clear your opponent's board for a massive swing in tempo, and at worst, he's an extra body that can push through your opponent's security when he comes back. So next, we've got 2 option cards, and that's just 2 of the Infinity Cannon. This is kind of Machinedramon in option form. So what this one does is that the main effect is that you can de-digivolve for just 1 of your opponent's Digimon. And if it's in your security, you get to trigger it as well. So again, this is kind of and I refer to a lot of cards as like the color equivalent of Gaia Force. And this is kind of the black equivalent of Gaia Force as well. It doesn't necessarily destroy a Digimon right away, but it does put them in a position where, again, they will be more susceptible to my blockers, and they will be easier to manage going forward. And then lastly, the final cards in the deck are just 3 of the tie. I mentioned him a lot, so he's the memory gainer. 4 cost, if you have 2, go to 3. But what he does is that all black Digimon during the opponent's turn gain plus 1000 DP. So again, since this deck is very blocker focused until I'm ready to be aggressive, what this does is that all of my blockers will gain massive heights, and it'll basically mean that I can successfully prevent every single one of your attacks, and more than likely my blockers will always survive. So yeah, that is the black deck. You play it, like again, it's very... You hold off, you hold off, you hold off, and you turtle until you see an opening, and then you just go full charge. And that's kind of how this deck plays. And it's very unique compared to the other decks that we've witnessed in the TCG so far. Now, this deck gets 100% better when the introduction of Craniumon in 1.5, but unfortunately, this is just kind of the best, personally, that way to play the deck right now. And this is based off what we managed to get our hands on. So yeah, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below if you'd change anything, if you'd add anything to it, if you'd fix something, if there's anything you don't agree with, let us know. This has been the black episode of the Rainbow series. Look forward to the next episode coming soon. All right, take care, guys. Bye.